Part 35. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 341. Whether Hornet wanted it or not, she had to launch her carrier aircraft. It's not that she doesn't want to delay, it's just that it's not easy to replenish aluminum materials for a set of hero machines. The raiders don't have that much aluminum in reserve, or if they do, they certainly won't take it out. Except for the Admiral, no outsider can even think of digging out a bit of aluminum from the mouth of an aircraft carrier. If you want aluminum, you need to think of another way. In short, it is not something that can be solved in a day or two. Even if he could delay it for a few days, those hero machines were not his, they were lent to him by his New York City sister. It can be heard from the conversation that my York City sister also put in a lot of effort to borrow and send her own carrier-based aircraft, and also helped lend out the hero aircraft. She must have put in a lot of effort. Just as Sister York City helps me, I can't be heartless. As I said earlier, I would only borrow a few days. If she continues to delay at this time, it will be difficult for her to handle it for too long. She can't be so selfish. They were still strangers a few days ago, but now they are considered sisters. To reach this point, it is extremely benevolent and righteous. If you ask yourself again, that would be too much. All in all, Bumblebee now feels more mournful than heartbroken. The bomber B-25 can obviously be touched by reaching out, but it is far apart. Bumblebee clenched his fists, thinking of his experiences along the way, which time it was smooth sailing again. She turned and looked toward the coast, where Yorktown and Northampton waved to her. Even if there are no carrier-based aircraft, as long as you have courage, no one is invincible. Bumblebee suddenly raised his head, his frustration turning into determination. The attacker saw the veins on Bumblebee's face beating, with a resolute look on his face, and asked in confusion, "What are you doing?" "You start flying carrier-based aircraft." "Assaulter, don't be arrogant, it's not over yet." Bumblebee's words made the attacker a little confused for a moment. He obviously didn't say anything, but he seemed to have done something heinous inexplicably. She wanted to ask what was going on, and then she saw Bumblebee finally raise his hand. Originally slow, Bumblebee's movements began to become agile at this time. The Hornet aimed the flight deck at the raiders, and carrier-based aircraft took off from her flight deck. Seeing the Hornet carrier-based aircraft taking off one after another, the attacker shook the flag in his hand, and then those cloth planes that looked like children cut them with scissors appeared in the sky, and were then blown away by the sea breeze. After floating for a few seconds, it turned into carrier-based aircraft. "Why did you only fly so many? You don't care, these few are enough to defeat you." The Hornet took the lead in releasing carrier-based aircraft, and whoever gained air superiority in the exercise between aircraft carriers would win. The Hornet's battle was the hero aircraft, which quickly gained altitude, sighted the raider bombers, and then began to dive. The attacker waved his hand, and the bombers in the sky dispersed. She is much better at controlling carrier-based aircraft than the Hornet. She can move them like an arm, but she is extremely skillful. Although the attackers only had bombers and no fighter planes, she was not too scared. Of course, without fighter jets, she would have no idea of gaining air superiority, but she was still somewhat confident that her carrier-based aircraft could avoid the follow-up pursuit of fighter jets. This is not a world created by 1.5 programmers. The carrier-based mechanism has too many requirements. This is not something that can be determined by the collision of carrier-based aircraft. The Hornet waved forward, and several fighter jets surrounded in a -2. Diving and spinning, Bumblebee said, "Raider, you've got one knocked out." "I know." Then in a -2 returned to her wind deck at the Raider's command and turned into a cloth aircraft again. The A-2 was clearly not destroyed, but according to Hornet, it was destroyed. This is the difference between actual combat and exercises. In actual combat, Once carrier-based aircraft start fighting, they will fall like raindrops. You can tell who has been destroyed at a glance. Of course, carrier-based aircraft cannot be shot down during exercises. If one is shot down, and a -2 or B-25, plus the consumption of aluminum, it is really enough to kill people. Flying consumes at most some fuel. As long as the ship itself is not sailing at high speed, the consumption of the carrier aircraft is really negligible. But if the carrier-based aircraft is shot down, aluminum needs to be consumed. If it can't be shot down, there will naturally be other ways to judge the outcome. During the exercise, if a fighter can keep up with the bomber and if it can point the fighter's own machine gun at the bomber several times, then the exercise will determine that a bomber has been destroyed. As long as the fighter jets can catch up with the bombers, depending on the performance of various carrier-based aircraft and the power of machine guns, the Type 96 ship battle will take a long time, while the Sea Venomous Fang will take a short time, and then it will be determined that a bomber has been destroyed. As for the air superiority between fighters, the prey is in the front and the killer is in the back. In short, there is a set of standards. Bumblebee needs air control, Raider doesn't have fighter jets, no need, she just has to get the bombers to fly into Bumblebee's face. Of course, we can't pounce directly on York City at this time, after all, everyone is so close. Bombers need to stay in the air for a certain period of time. This time is the time it takes from searching for the enemy to the enemy, and then considering the time it takes for the carrier-based aircraft to pounce on the enemy. Based on this time standard, the bomber needs to stay in the air for that long. If within this time, all bombers are judged to be destroyed, then the Hornet wins, otherwise the Raiders win. Of course this is just an exercise and cannot be like a real battle. Drills are only a standard for evaluating intensity, and there are still some gaps between drills and actual combat. Just like the avant-garde is much more powerful than the reputation in the training ground, but when attacking, he will always have a prestigious position, but the avant-garde will always be on the bench, just the queen of the training ground. Hornet controlled the fighter jet to fly in a circle in the air, shouting, "Tornado charge tornado." That was just an offensive roller move, the Raider said. Falling sun. It was just a dive attack. Two dragons playing with pearls. The attacker couldn't bear it anymore, and she said, "You just controlled two fighter jets to attack one of mine, and you gave me such an exaggerated name." "Nonsense, I won't lose, Raider." The Hornets and the Raiders were fighting fiercely. Northampton on the coast watched in confusion, but York City watched with interest. Anyway, laymen watch the fun, and experts watch the door. York City is Zeppelin's proud student. Although she is the only student of Zeppelin now, she has to be proud even if she is not proud. York City is not a shy person and will be brave enough to ask questions if she encounters any problems during training. Although Lexington and Akaga usually don't take the initiative to teach anything, if someone asks questions, they still tell everything they know. Although York City is not very strong, it still has some vision. Cobra maneuver. Scissor line flight. You can't tell, but the Hornet is still quite powerful, but those are hero machines, so it's much easier to make such moves. Not understanding the word at all, Northampton asked, "What's that?" "Flying action." Northampton couldn't understand the flight movements, but she could understand one thing. She asked, "Why did the Hornets only fly so many? There were so many Raiders." "The Hornet has no replenishment of aluminum, so it can only fly so many carrier-based aircraft." "Can she only release so many carrier-based aircraft?" How to fight. York City looked at Northampton. Unlike Northampton, who knew everything but knew nothing, she could still see the battle situation clearly. Although the Hornet holds the hero aircraft, which is fast and has good performance, it is just as difficult to shoot down those bombers. There were too many defensive actions by those bombers, coupled with the number of Hornet carrier-based aircraft. In short, York City shook its head. York City said, the number of Hornet fighter jets can't keep up, so why fight like this? Of course there is no need to fight. There is no need to fight, indeed there is no need to fight. After climbing high, diving and attacking, and chasing after each other, it was rare that a bomber was judged destroyed. 1 minute. 3 minutes. 10 minutes. The attacker said, I don't know where you got the hero plane. You have obtained air superiority, but you can't destroy all my bombers. Now the time is coming, and I still have a lot of bombers. Bumblebee yelled, stop talking nonsense, I'm looking at my watch, there's still 50 seconds left. Bumblebee looked at her watch with a somewhat majestic look. The seconds she looked at her pocket watch felt like the hanging rope was tightening little by little. The majesty disappeared, and she begged, I didn't release all the fighter jets, can't I be more accommodating? Of course it won't work. I told you not to practice, but you had to drag me to practice. My pot is still on the railing. After waiting a little longer, the attacker said, it's time. The attacker opened her hands, and her bombers tore through the fighter net and flew past the Hornet's ear. This is just an act. Of course, it is impossible to actually drop a tallboy bomb. As long as the bomber flies into the bumblebee's face, it naturally means that the bumblebee is under attack. 1. 3. The cross. The attacker counted his bombers and said, you only destroyed a few of my bombers. I still have so many bombers. Based on the strength of the B-25 and a -2, it is now determined that the Hornet has been sunk. It's over, everything is over. When several B-25s circled above it, the Hornet knew that it had lost. Although it can be said that its armor is thick and a few bombers can't harm it, those B-25s are their children. She was the only one who could not deny the capabilities of these B-25s. Even if she got the hero plane, she still didn't have the ability to defeat the raiders. Although it was true that the hero plane was not fully loaded, she actually knew that she couldn't control so many hero fighters at one time. Even if all the hero aircraft can take off one after another, if there is no way to allocate energy to control the carrier-based aircraft, those hero aircraft will not be able to cause too much damage. Some people have digitized the battleship. If the firepower of the battleship truly represents the power of the turret, for an aircraft carrier that does not rely on turrets and machine guns, the firepower is of no use. But when dividing firepower, we actually consider the mental capacity of an aircraft carrier girl. The higher the firepower, the more carrier-based aircraft a ship girl can control with distraction. Bumblebee had to admit that he was indeed inferior to the raiders. His manipulation ability and distraction ability were nothing compared to the raiders. Originally, the carrier-based aircraft could be blamed for the failure, but now the hero aircraft are used, but the result is still like this, and even I can't find any reason. Thinking of this, Bumblebee had some tears in his eyes. She was a little discouraged and sat on the sea, holding her knees with her hands. The ripples on the sea surface swayed in circles with her as the center. She sat on the sea surface, not looking like she would sink. The admiral took away his carrier-based aircraft before, and the raider took his B-25 and refused to return it to him. No one loves him. Bumblebee was sitting on the sea, looking a little lost. At this time, the attacker walked over. Bumblebee, you're getting better and better. It's not like we lost. If all your hero machines can fly and can be controlled well, I might lose. If you lose, you lose. The attacker took out the B-25 in his hand and said, I have been keeping this B-25. I said before that as long as you beat me in exercises, I will give it back to you. Now. Bumblebee's eyes widened at the attacker's words. Usually the attacker would never take out the B-25 in front of her, but this time he actually took out the B-25. She suddenly thought of countless stories. In order to motivate their disciples, those senior masters took away valuable things belonging to their disciples, making their disciples hate themselves, and then work hard to become stronger. Only at the last and most critical moment, until the moment when his disciples grow up, will the senior masters tell his disciples the truth of the matter. Yes, everyone in the guardhouse is a sister, so they might do such a thing. Thinking about the American ships, the Lexington, Saratoga, Essex, and Raider are among the worst. Therefore, when heaven is about to entrust a person with a great responsibility, he must first strain his mind and will, strain his muscles and bones, starve his body and skin, deplete his body, and mess up his actions. Therefore, tempting his heart and forbearance will benefit him beyond his ability. If I get my own B-25, I will definitely not continue to work hard. I will only work hard if I don't get the B-25. Did the Raiders not return the B-25 to themselves just to make themselves work harder? So now, Bumblebee looked at the attacker. At this time, the attacker's back was facing the sun, and his whole person looked a little dark, but there was a bright light behind him. It must be the holy light. Indeed, she vaguely heard the sound of hallelujah. In order to show humility, the Raider did not speak, and the Hornet said, I still have many shortcomings, and the number of attacks is too few. Even the hero machine is borrowed from others, and I rely on Northampton to take care of me when I go out. Insufficient firepower is insufficient, and insufficient ability to control carrier-based aircraft is insufficient. There is nothing to complain about. There are not so many what-ifs in the world, and there are not so many what-ifs. The attacker said, You have many shortcomings. Bumblebee felt that her whole body was full of courage. She said firmly, I have many shortcomings, but I will work harder and strive to be worthy of the B-25. Let the B-25 become famous because of me, the Bumblebee, not me, the Bumblebee famous because of the B-25. The Raider cheered up when she saw Bumblebee. She put away the B-25 and said, Then just work hard like this. When you beat me, I will return your B-25 to you. The Raider put away the B-25, and Bumblebee was stunned for a moment. Didn't you take out the B-25 because I did a good job and just almost won, then motivated me, and finally gave it back to me? Bumblebee murmured, Then, that B-25. I just showed it to you and told you that the B-25 cannot be returned to you. With his shoulders slumped, Bumblebee asked doubtfully, Aren't you going to give it back to me? Of course I won't give it back to you. You have lost. We agreed that I will give it back to you only if you win. Bumblebee said, Then why are you talking so much? The attacker felt aggrieved and said, Can't you even speak? You did a good job, but you lost. I took out the B-25 and told you that the B-25 cannot be returned to you. With his shoulders hunched, his whole body trembling, and his teeth chattering, Bumblebee shouted loudly, Assaulter! You don't keep your word. What's the matter? Why don't I keep my word? If I lose, I lose. If I win, I win. It's me who wins. Bumblebee rushed towards the attacker, Assaulter, Baichi, I'm going to kill you. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 342. Which one of them won? York City said, the Hornet lost. Her carrier-based aircraft was not full to begin with. Even if it was full, it would be difficult to defeat the Raider. With the Raider's ability to control the carrier-based aircraft, is she a monster? I originally thought that the Raiders were more powerful than me, at most as good as my Zeppelin instructor, but now they seem to be even more powerful than my Lexington sister. York City looked surprised, and Northampton gave the answer. She said, the Raider is especially good at controlling bombers. As long as she is not a bomber, her level is much worse. Especially for torpedo planes, her control level is even worse. The secretary ship of our garrison is Lexington, my sister Lexington. She is very good at controlling carrier-based aircraft. Well, the bomber is not as good as the raider, but she can control more at one time. There are many more carrier-based aircraft than raiders. In particular, her command ability is very powerful. Listening to her command next to her can at least improve the capabilities of carrier-based aircraft to a higher level. Considering things like speed and armor, my Lexington sister is more powerful. Lexington is powerful, and Saratoga is especially powerful, but York City doesn't want to admit that the girlish-looking Saratoga is much more powerful than itself. Northampton said, "You can't understand it even if you tell me." Well, but I also know a Lexington, who is pretty good. As a heavy cruiser, Northampton can only give a good rating. She doesn't have much feeling for aircraft carriers, and she doesn't like to use words such as super powerful. Lexington, they all seem to be awesome. York City said this, both of them nodded, and then Northampton said, "What are they doing?" In their field of vision, the two saw Bumblebee sitting on the sea surface, then raising the flight deck in his hands and hitting the attacker. On the sea, the Hornet raised the flight deck and smashed it towards the attacker. It seemed that it was very powerful and powerful. However, he did not deliberately use the power of the ship's equipment. With the strength of ordinary people, even if he waved the steel deck, he could not bring much damage to the attackers. The Bumblebee hit him many times, and the attacker put his hand in front of his face and said aggrievedly, "If you lose, you lose. If you lose, I'll hit you. I'll never practice with you again. Give me back the B-25. No." Already knowing such an answer, Bumblebee gave the attacker a cold look before sailing towards the shore. The attacker followed up and said, "The exercise was quite exciting. Who gave you those hero machines?" "My Yorktown sister." "Can you take a look at it for me?" "No. I feel familiar." The attacker felt a little familiar, but he couldn't really call it familiar. After all, carrier-based aircraft are not like ship girls, and no one cares about what a carrier-based aircraft looks like. It's just a hero aircraft. As an aircraft carrier, I still have some expectations. Everyone is familiar with you. Are you so powerful? Why don't you make a big difference? Even a carrier-based aircraft can tell if you are familiar with me. I won't show it to you unless you give me the B-25 and we will exchange. If I give it to you, I can't get it back, so forget it." Although the hero fighter is very powerful, his B-25 and a -2 are the leaders among bombers. Although fighter jets can ensure air superiority, in real terms, bombers play a greater role. After all, deep-sea ship girls rarely have strong air control, unless you want to face the deep-sea flagship directly. Facing deep-sea Akagakaga, deep-sea Shokakuzi Wikaku and deep-sea Kamikaze, only in this case a large amount of air control is needed. The B-25 and a -2 are very powerful, but they consume a lot of aluminum. Returning to the shore from the sea, Northampton said, "I lost again." She usually behaves gently and weakly, but Bumblebee is her good friend. Bumblebee has challenged her many times and lost every time. To rub salt into the wound, Bumblebee's wound should be considered a scab. "Yeah," Bumblebee responded, looking lifeless. The raider followed Bumblebee ashore. She looked at York City and asked, "Can you show me those hero machines?" "Well, no problem, but I don't have the hero machine." "Since they are all ship girls, you don't have to worry about borrowing them and not returning them. The more unfamiliar the ship girls are, the more polite they will be. On the contrary, if a familiar ship girl takes something from you, she may not return it to you. The better the relationship, the less likely it is to return it." York City wanted to do this kind of thing by grabbing things from familiar people, but it couldn't afford to offend even an aircraft carrier in the garrison. In the end, the only thing he dared to do was to take the admiral's things and not return them, compared to the pot of orchids placed in his room. Then can you tell me the origin of the hero machine? The hero machine is not mine, it was borrowed by my people. Who? York City wanted to speak, but Bumblebee, who was walking in front, said loudly, "Sister, don't tell her." Now her sister seemed to be angry. York City smiled at the attacker, saying that she didn't know whether to say it or not. Finally, she said, "What happened to you?" The attacker felt aggrieved and said, "Nothing happened. I won and she lost. It's that simple. She lost when she lost. She even raised the flight deck to hit me. It's unreasonable." Bumblebee said, "You are a bastard, there is no one like you." The attacker's grievance completely turned into innocence. Bumblebee lost the exercise and lost miserably. Bumblebee sulked on the second floor of the candy store for a long time. The raiders saw Bumblebee on the second floor with a nose-to-nose, eye-to-eye attitude toward him. "Alas, this is my own house, and you are still like this," the attacker seemed even more aggrieved. Bumblebee was lying on the sofa. She was overeating and eating a lot of food, which belonged to the raiders anyway. Eating, chatting, and berating the attackers. In the afternoon, Bumblebee suddenly said, "Sister, have you been to the bar?" "I've never been there. I heard it's a very messy place." Bumblebee sat up on the sofa and said, "Let's go to the bar." Northampton said, "If you want to get drunk, don't you just lose?" "Northampton, Miss Northampton, it's easy for you to say, if you don't want to go, I will." Soon after, the three of them ran to a bar near the small building in the community without the attacker. It was a slightly upscale bar. It was either too messy or the whole bar looked a little dark. The music in the bar was loud, the colorful lights were dazzling, and the people on the dance floor were dancing very high. When they arrived at the bar, they felt uncomfortable and didn't like it at all, so they found a corner and ordered a fruit plate. Anyway, just think of it as an eye-opener. The bar is a very chaotic and mysterious place. Of course, now that I'm here, it's a bit awkward to only order a fruit plate, so I order a few glasses of wine at will. Just like Grandma Lou visiting the Grand View Garden, they looked around. I didn't go to the dance floor. I met many people who tried to strike up a conversation, but I rejected them all until the drinks I ordered came. York City looked at the wine glass. The colors in the glass were clearly layered. She said, "I have drunk red wine before, but I have never drunk cocktails. I really don't know that so many colors can be achieved like this." Bumblebee said, "I heard that you can just pour several kinds of wine together and then shake it." Northampton was dragged over, and she said, "I remember you can also add soda and juice. I wonder if milk is okay." York City said, "That's wine, how can you add milk? Milk is only for children. Cocktails usually contain rum, gin, tequila, vodka." It was a male voice. Three beautiful girls appeared in the bar, and naturally there were many people chatting with them. York City said, "Can I add Laobigan? And Sanhua wine?" The man hesitated. "Well, that. You can add milk. I wonder if fermented bean curd and chili sauce can be added. By the way, you can also add soup and soy sauce. When you get married." York City remembered that his admiral once said that during the wedding banquet, he gave a red envelope as a friend. A red envelope is topped with a glass of wine, which is basically some beer, but there is also a hodgepodge for the finale. Soup, soy sauce, spicy ketchup, beer, and sweet potato wine were all mixed together, and it felt somewhat similar to the cocktail in front of me. Bumblebee said, "Do you need a red envelope for your wedding?" "I have never given one. I didn't make any arrangements. There was no banquet. I just gave him a ring and that was it." The three people were chattering and looked very disrespectful towards wine. The men who originally came to chat with them with a glass of wine were left aside. They tried to interrupt many times, but they felt that they could not keep up with the imagination of these girls. In the end, He could only leave with some embarrassment, returned to his seat, and endured a lot of ridicule. They only ordered a glass of wine but multiple fruit plates. When they left the bar, it was already evening. York City said, "Let's go out to eat?" "No, go back and ask the raiders to do it for us." York City was silent for a while. "So what kind of relationship do you have? Are you in love and killing each other?" York City added, "There is a cat there with bright eyes. Let's catch it. I am the Beast King Hunter." "What does Beast King hunting mean?" "He is the hunter who is best at getting along with all kinds of animals." "That's it?" "My admiral is the best at saying all kinds of interesting things. The destroyers in the garrison like to listen to his stories the most, and I also like to listen." Bumblebee said, "Our admiral has never told us a story. He didn't even say a few words. He only talked about fishing, swearing, and building. What else is there?" "Oyado, you are the only ship I want. I am Majing Gong, Dadian is not very powerful, and King Kong is not very powerful either, so it is so confusing. I've never seen Oyado, have you seen King Kong? Well, your admirals are terrible. Our admirals are interesting and very nice people. Do you want to go to my garrison and have a look?" Bumblebee said, "No, I have an admiral, and I will never join someone else's garrison." York City was silent. She was a ship girl herself. No matter how good someone else's admiral was, she couldn't betray her own admiral. Unless he did something really, really bad. Bumblebee asked again, "Is your garrison strong?" "Yes, very strong. I mainly studied with Zeppelin. I didn't wake up for a year, and I feel very powerful." "Zeppelin, I've never seen it. Can I go to your garrison?" "But I'm just going to study, I can't join you. I can pay the tuition and help you in the attack, just like an apprentice. I know many powerful aircraft carriers, but they can't find it, so I won't learn from the raiders." York City opened her hand and started to launch the satellite. She said, "Everyone in our garrison is very nice, especially the admiral. It doesn't matter how you bully him. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 343. Come out of the bar and walk down the night street. Although Fujian City is a big city, the city center is indeed brightly lit and crowded with people. But this one is close to the pier, and you have to walk a long way from the street beside the pier to get to it, outside the community called Xiazu. There were only a few pedestrians on the street, and there were only dim lights from street lights around. I saw many cats on the road, including orange cats and dark clouds walking on the snow. These wild cats are not afraid of people. Bumblebee walked at the front of the team. Although he didn't drink much wine, he just casually ordered a glass of wine with a powerful sounding name. I drank it all in one gulp and then started eating the fruit plate. She didn't think anything of it at first, but when she left the bar and the sea breeze blew, she seemed a little dizzy, and the street lamps and telephone poles were already blurry double images. Even though she was a little drunk, she didn't think of using the power of the ship suit to sober up. Although the ship-mounted boiler is burned, any alcohol will be burned away. After all, the one beside him is his new sister, the York City. One is his best friend, the Northampton. In my impression, York City is a mature and reliable sister. Although Northampton seems a little weak, she is best at protecting her companions. Once her companions encounter danger, they are also heroic and courageous. With them, there will never be any accidents. I might as well go to your garrison. Wanting to go to his sister's garrison in York City was certainly not a shameful betrayal. He just wanted to go, but he would never join. I worked part-time in the past and got the opportunity to attack. I heard that there was Zeppelin in the garrison. He used to be an instructor at the academy, so he must be very powerful. But it doesn't look good to go to someone else's garrison and not join, but I can pay for the tuition and go out on my own without any reward, so I guess I won't suffer any loss. After being reduced to such a state, Lexington, Saratoga, and many other people who called their own garrison could no longer be found. Although I can follow Raider, I just don't want to learn from her. Think about the time when the garrison fell apart, the admiral disappeared, and everyone was no longer in the mood to get along with each other. The first person left, and many people left one after another. The attacker ran away for some unknown reason, and then he quickly chased after him without taking anything with him. Only Northampton followed. Since it is not a shameful betrayal, the Hornets have no psychological pressure. They just don't know whether Northampton will follow. This is the only thing that needs to be entangled. Although he was slightly drunk, he still spoke in an organized manner. He didn't bump into pillars or run around in circles. Outsiders couldn't tell that Bumblebee's voice was half a beat slower than usual. York City didn't pay attention to Bumblebee's current state. She was broadcasting satellites, "My admiral is very good." Bumblebee, now that the admiral is gone and the garrison is gone, York City has wanted to say this for a long time. I just came here and the hero machine was loaned out. Not long after, Bumblebee wanted to conduct an exercise again. The exercise also resulted in the inadequacy of aluminum materials and insufficient carrier-based aircraft. Later, he was busy comforting Bumblebee, who failed in the exercise, and he was busy condemning the attackers, and he didn't even have time to introduce his garrison. Back in his garrison, he sent away the carrier-based aircraft and borrowed the hero aircraft. He also planned to surprise the admiral and take Bumblebee home. Of course, he just brought it home. We don't care whether he can salvage the boat as an admiral. Well, salvaging the ship is difficult. In fact, it is more selfish. The addition of Bumblebee will probably be like the examples in the stories told by the admiral, where he is in CAO's camp and his heart is in Han. But as long as Han doesn't appear, he should stay in CAO Yang forever. Just like Instructor Zeppelin, although he does not recognize his admiral as the admiral, he thinks about all issues from the perspective of the garrison. It's just that there are many differences between Bumblebee and Zeppelin. After all, there was an admiral originally. Bumblebee's psychological barrier is much greater. Ah! York City stretched out a hand and knocked on his head. It was too troublesome to think about the problem, so he decided not to think about it anymore. Let's talk about it later when problems arise. She is impulsive in nature and is a typical example of caring about her head and body. Looking back along the street, I heard the sound of a whistle in the distance. York City introduced his admiral in a sarcastic way. Sugu would probably feel ashamed if he were here. In our garrison, our admiral became an admiral in a short period of time, and we have zero capital beyond our capabilities. The academy instructor Zeppelin has now arrived at the garrison, and the Akagi instructor has turned into a wedding ship. These were selectively ignored by York City. Everyone else is thinking about how to build their garrison. Our admiral has only built it once, and that was me. How should I put it? It seems greedy to always build, but he has never been like this. He is very good. He will never take other people's equipment. For example, I gave you my carrier-based aircraft. The admiral didn't say anything more. How can an ordinary garrison do this? He especially likes little girls. It's not like many admirals don't like them. It's just based on strength. After York City finished talking, Northampton said, "I heard about a society like Would You Like Some Rabbits today, have you joined, Admiral?" The admirals in that club all like destroyers. Although my admiral likes destroyers, he likes battleships the most. Bumblebee was at the front and they were talking all the way home. The curtains in the candy store were drawn, but the lights were still on, and Bumblebee reached out to knock on the door. When she heard York City's voice, she turned her head and said, "Like battleships. That's just lustful." There was a knock on the door, and within a few seconds, the attacker opened the door. Bumblebee entered the room first. York City thought to herself that her admiral was indeed quite lustful, but she couldn't say it here. She said, "Battleship is also a little girl." Bumblebee didn't seem to hear. Northampton said, "Little girl battleship. Yes, we call her the little house, the little Tirpitz." Northampton mused, followed by York City, who then heard the attacker say, "Why did you come back? Where did you go?" Bumblebee said, "Went to the bar." "You didn't even call me." "Of course I won't call you. Where's dinner?" The raider had adapted to Bumblebee's tone, and she said, "I'll save the curry chicken for you." It's a recognition. After dinner, Bumblebee lay on the bed. She drank wine and was a little sleepy. Northampton asked York City to go to the balcony of the small building. Northampton kept listening to what York City said. He didn't think anything about it, and he didn't think it was such a coincidence. It became more and more wrong later on. She was not as careless as a bumblebee, and then she heard the Tirpitz called a small house. Only the small house is absolutely unique. Northampton said, "You have never said the name of your admiral." I supervise, just like telling my friends and classmates interesting things about my family. My dad and brother never say their names, only code names. It's the same for ship girls. When two people talk, they rarely call their admiral by name. Name. I haven't brought it up until now, but now that the other party asks, it's not an issue that needs to be concealed. York City stretched out his hand to stir up the potted citrus trees on the balcony, and said, "Sugu, the name of our admiral. I like to call him Mr. Sug, and by the way, I was the one who called him that nickname. He always looks like he doesn't have a majestic appearance. It doesn't matter if he is called Sug, or Xiao Sug. People call him Old Sug, and people call him Sug. It doesn't matter as long as it's not a serious derogatory connotation. Sometimes I think, then he is more like our friend than the admiral. You said he was very good. It's very good, really very good. If we had just met him, I would have thought he was an average person. I felt the same way at first. He said something to me before, no one likes to be alone, but he doesn't like it even more. It's just a disappointment. He wants to care for everyone, but he is afraid that it is just wishful thinking. He always tells people that if you want something, just say it. He is shy easily, but he is essentially a good person. Were all the people in your garrison built by him? No, I heard that he had a garrison in the past. The garrison was very powerful, so powerful that it was a bit scary. It's just that people generally don't mention the things about the garrison before. Northampton asked again, "Sugu, is this his name?" Those hero machines of yours were all given to you by Lexington." "Yeah, how do you know?" "I remember not saying it." Northampton ladylike folded her hands on her lower abdomen and said, "You must have been deceived by him." "What lied?" "Your admiral." "Still don't understand." Northampton smiled brightly and said, "Forget it, York City, thank you." "What do you mean?" York City was confused. It would be understandable if the Hornets were thanking themselves, but they had not helped Northampton. "You are indeed Bumblebee's sister." "I am." Northampton left the balcony and then went to find the raiders. "Do you feel that Bumblebee's hero machine is a little familiar?" "I can't tell." "Do you feel it?" The attacker said, "It's a bit familiar. They happen to be those two, La-7, Coach head-up aircraft, and P-39, Pokrishkin aircraft. But I asked Bumblebee to see it, but she wouldn't give it to me. Look. That was borrowed by York City from a Lexington and loaned to the Hornet." "What a coincidence," I remember our Lexington, you mean. Don't you think it's too much of a coincidence? Northampton told what he knew, and the raider said, is our admiral that good? Probably not. I also think it's a bit exaggerated. And isn't he missing? He is completely missing, and he can't feel any contact at all. Otherwise, if he just went out, everyone in the Toot Larry mansion would definitely be waiting for him in the Toot Larry mansion. It was because he couldn't feel it at all, that's why everyone left. No body was found. I still feel a little unbelievable. Have you told Bumblebee? No, I'm afraid the Hornet will come to the door with a knife. Have you spoken to that York City? No, York City looks obviously stupid girl. By the next day, although Bumblebee said that he was going to his sister's garrison in York City. Before that, as a landowner, she planned to take York City to have a good time in Fujian City. After all, Fujian City is a long-established international metropolis. Compared with emerging cities like Shuangziu, it still has outstanding features. They took a good look at the high-rise buildings of big companies, and even went to Ocean Park at noon. I also heard bad news in the park. It seemed that an accident had occurred. A star seal was eaten by a polar bear that ran past without knowing how. They mourned deeply and continued shopping. Although it is a ship, girl, it is not a submarine. There are many fish in the sea that I have never seen before, such as monkfish, dolphins, sea orzes. This time the Ocean Park gave York City a good experience. In the afternoon, I went to the botanical garden again. I came out soon after. The only impression I had of the botanical garden in York City was that there was a well-protected tea tree. I heard that tea was very expensive. She herself had drank a lot of tea, but apart from the bitterness, it was not famous. I just think it's so expensive, it would be a shame not to drink it. Bumblebee was walking around with York City, and Raider stayed alone in the candy house. Wine chocolate, milk chocolate, this is a chocolate donut. Let me show you a magic trick. This is a chocolate bird. There are not many customers in the candy store. Even in a place like Fujian City, things like chocolate are still luxurious candies. Paper-wrapped candies are the most commonly eaten candies by ordinary children. The attacker was sitting bored in the store. The door curtain was opened by a woman who looked somewhat capable. Behind the woman was the female admiral he had seen yesterday. The admiral looks weak and the ship girl looks strong. Have you heard of that rumor? There is a garrison that defeated the deep-sea flagship. Everyone is an admiral. In fact, we can also ask him for help. We just feel that we can't trouble others, so we still hope that you can get it cheaper. Anyway, you don't need to pay too much. If you are really unwilling to lower the price, we can only find someone else. They come here specifically to lower the price. The raiders always stayed in their own shops and the rumors were not heard. Then I heard what the ship girl said, and it turned out that she probably didn't care. I remembered what I heard Northampton say last night, and the more I listened, the more familiar it became. What's that admiral's name? Don't worry about the name, he's our junior anyway. Is your surname Zhao? Yes. The attacker thought to himself, she looked capable, just as good as the unreliable ship girl. She said, it should be Su. Then you go find him. I plan to close the store in a few days and stop doing business. Look for him, go find him, you will still see me. Bumblebee returned to the store in the afternoon. The raider looked at her carrying large and small bags and asked, did you have fun? Of course, we are going to visit the luxury cruise ship in Beijing tomorrow, don't be envious. Have fun while you get the chance. What do you mean? The attacker didn't speak anymore. Bumblebee stared at the attacker for a long time, and then went about doing his own thing. Because of the deep-sea warships, battleships have become obsolete, and quite a few battleships have been converted into luxury yachts and even museums. The next day, Bumblebee took York City to board those battleships. Thinking that he was born because of such battleships, several people felt deeply. Bumblebee took York City for a few days and finally decided to go with York City on the third day. As for the people traveling with him, Northampton, I knew you wouldn't leave me, and, Raider, why are you following us? Looking for the lost ship girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 344. Why did Northampton come here? You want to go and have a look at such a powerful garrison, and even the bumblebees are there. York City asked again, why are the attackers here too? Northampton can understand because Bumblebee wants to get the opportunity to train and become familiar with carrier-based aircraft. After all, Bumblebee is going to go. She is a friend of Bumblebee, so the raiders are a little strange. York City had only seen the other party's skillful carrier-based aircraft control capabilities, and it seemed that its own garrison was really not attractive to the other party. The attacker said, I want to see your admiral. The attacker wore a t-shirt with a low neckline, revealing the faint deep grooves on his collarbone and chest. York City saw the scene and thought, you don't want to see our admiral, you want our admiral to look at you. But since the raiders wanted to come, York City had no reason to stop them. Set off in the morning and sail all the way. During the voyage, York City introduced its garrison. Things that were difficult to introduce before are now easy to introduce because Bumblebee has boarded the pirate ship. Our townhouse is not big, and the facilities inside are quite rich. There is a playground, a chess and card room, and many activity rooms. I heard that I wanted to open a bakery recently, but in the end I felt that there were some troubles and kept putting it off. I will probably continue in the future. There are no ordinary people in our town hall, so no one should underestimate her. There was a firefly. I just pulled her hair and she hit her head. My chest hurt for many days. There are two roads from the outside to our town hall. One is a mountain road, which takes a long time to drive, and there are deep mountains and old forests nearby. The other road is a waterway. You can either come by boat or sail over. It's a bit funny to say that in the past, fishermen would occasionally come over. When they went to the sea near here, they would always find black shadows under the water from time to time. They cast their fishing nets, but they couldn't catch anything. Instead, the entire fishing boat they were dragged around. Then there was news that there were monsters in the water, and then few people came over. Those black shadows were actually submarines, and let me tell you, we have several submarines in the garrison, they are awesome. That's the county seat over there. There's also a garrison in the county seat, and that garrison only houses the Kaohsiung. There are two garrisons at such a close distance, because that garrison only has Kaohsiung. A Kaohsiung has to guard such a large sea area. It's still a little too difficult. Our town hall was rebuilt on the basis of the original town hall. There is a wishing wall in the town hall, which was left by the former admiral. The admiral has not allowed it to be erased. If you go, you must take a look. York City talked about many things along the way, such as the small garrison and the many Shura fields. For example, when Saratoga is with the admiral, don't bother him at the end. For example, Bismarck looked cold, serious, and rigid, and he would always get a response if he asked her for help. For example, Lexington looks gentle, but actually, sailing alone on the sea seems a bit boring, but when there are many people talking, time flies by. From Fujian City, passing by Chuangzhou and then to the Tut Larry Mansion, sailing in a straight line at a speed of more than 20 knots, York City took everyone there before 12 o'clock starting from the morning. In front of the field of vision, the outline of the Tut Larry Mansion can already be seen. Did you see it in front? It looks like a mountain is recessed, and that's the Tut Larry Mansion. There is a long step in front of the Tut Larry Mansion, and the steps were later made into a slide with cement next to the railing. Destroyers like to play with slides, and this slide is better than the slide in the amusement park inside the townhouse is longer. The destroyer slid down the stairs, then hugged his butt and said that his butt was going to be worn out. That scene was particularly funny. All the way to the pier, a few people came ashore, but no one was seen on the pier. Bumblebee raised his head and looked at the Toot Larry mansion in front of him. The gate of the Toot Larry mansion looked quite tall, but there were couplets on both sides, which gave people a strange feeling. Is this where you want to live? You have to study here, for 1, 2 or 3 years. Of course, the best way is to strangle the pink-haired and big-breasted guy next to you, get the carrier-based aircraft back, and then you can be at ease. Bumblebee said, shall we just go in? There's no rush, I'd better call the Admiral out to welcome you. Do you really dare to think about it? Northampton said, I was still thinking about whether to inform you that you are calling people to greet us. Do we have such a big name? The reported matter was ignored, and of course it was even more impossible to ask people to come out to greet him. Several people walked into the governor's mansion and passed by the grass. Bumblebee saw a somewhat familiar figure. A girl with pink hair was wearing a sleeveless dress. She was lying on the grass, raising her hands high, and reading a book. Bumblebee said, who is that? The North House, also known as the Turpits. Her sister Bismarck didn't like her always staying in the room, so she probably kicked her out. If you meet her, don't worry about her, she is harmless to humans and animals. Well, let's go first, the office is right in front. Bumblebee was a little confused, but York City was walking in front and already urging her, so she had to keep up. York City said as he walked, we didn't see any destroyers today. Normally they would be running around in the garrison. It's strange. She took several people with her to the magnolia tree in front of the office, where she saw Zeppelin. Zeppelin, wearing black trousers and a short-sleeved shirt, looked up at the treetops. York City asked in confusion, Instructor Zeppelin, what's going on today? I didn't see a single destroyer. The weather is getting hotter and hotter. Yesterday we went to Sichuan show in Saratoga and San Juan. Well, you'll know when you take a look inside the office. As he spoke, Zeppelin shook his head, rotten, degenerate, I heard that some ship girls here used to work in the gendarmerie. Standing in front of the office, York City looked at Bumblebee and the others and said, wait a moment. York City was just about to enter the office when he walked out of Atlanta. York City, you're back. Atlanta smiled, showing her little fangs, and she said, if someone has something of yours, you can go to the warehouse to get it. York City said, what? See for yourself, Atlanta said with a mysterious smile. The two of them passed by each other, and Atlanta was a little confused when he saw a few people coming back with York City, Big Hornets, Northampton, Raiders. At the same time, Bumblebee also saw Atlanta. She hadn't seen him for a long time and met him in a completely unexpected place. She was confused at first, then hesitant, and then slowly turned into surprise. On the other side, York City walked into the office and saw a scene that he absolutely did not expect. All three submarines were wearing blue water, Sigsbee was wearing a white swimming skirt, and his admiral was squatting in front of the little house, tugging at the ruffled skirt of the little house's pink children's swimsuit. I brought such an important person back, but I encountered such an unbearable scene. Snapped. The city of York has closed its doors and family scandals must not be made public. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 345. York City borrowed the Hero machine from its garrison, and Sugu still had enough trust in his initial ship. I have been with York City for such a long time, almost a year. Although there were blushes and quarrels, she had a pretty clear idea of what kind of girl York City was. Even if the setting that York City is a ship girl is discarded, York City will probably not do anything to abscond with money. Going out in York City will not have much impact on Sugu, and life will go on. Richelieu came back a few days ago, and there were a few more people and a few more pairs of bowls and chopsticks for the garrison. After a few days of getting along, the only thing that brings huge changes to our lives is fantasy. Fantasy, Lafayette, and Xiaozai, the three of them get together and become the most naughty children in the town hall. These days I can only deliberately tell Helena to keep strict supervision on these three guys. Helena has been entrusted with the important task of managing the little girl since she came back. It's almost June. This is a southern city, close to the equator. I've been wearing single clothes a few days ago. But now, well, even if it's hot, of course I can't be naked. Saratoga had tried on her sister's swimsuit a long time ago. Remembering that there happened to be a golden beach near the governor's mansion, and in the real world, there was no restriction on changing clothes and requiring Krypton gold, so Saratoga suggested going to Chuangzhou to buy it. A swimsuit for everyone. If Lexington had proposed this opinion, Sugu would have thought about it for 10 minutes before agreeing, but if it had been proposed by his sister-in-law, Sugu would have agreed without even half a second. The cute sister-in-law, Sugu can expose all his evil thoughts. Of course, Sugu knew better about his sister-in-law's evil thoughts. When adults buy swimsuits, of course little girls also need swimsuits. The governor's office is not short of money, it's a big purchase anyway. I bought the swimsuit, but as an adult, unless you really want to go swimming, no matter how cute the swimsuit is, you won't wear it casually. You can try it on in your own room at most. Saratoga bought a lot of swimsuits, bought them back, and made them available for everyone to choose from. During the day, she would still maintain a serious look, just blinking at Sugu, and her silent lip language was enough for people to read the words waiting for the evening. It was just that at night, Sugu failed to see her swimsuit and saw Lexington's swimsuit. The little girl is casual and bought a swimsuit yesterday. They wanted to go swimming today, so they tried on swimsuits. They didn't mind wearing them in front of Sugu. Leaving aside submarines and gun submarines, they always wear swimsuits, even if it's cold, and most of the time wear a coat outside. As usual, submarines are equipped with dead water as standard. Cannon submarine Sukufu did not change her clothes. Her figure is more exaggerated than U-81, which makes people imagine. Sigsby changed into a white swimming skirt, which was very beautiful. Xiaozai is wearing a pink swimsuit. The swimsuit only covers her chest, exposing her lower abdomen and her cute belly button. Below are swimming trunks with a small hem and layers of ruffles. Imagine them going to change into their swimsuits, but they haven't come down yet. Even a little girl would certainly not change clothes in front of Sugu, otherwise she would really go to the gendarmerie. Xiaozai, your swimsuit is a bit small, your flesh is bulging, and you feel fatter. Nice dress. The little girl's belly cannot be touched casually, at least now it has some bad effects. Sugu reached out and wanted to touch Xiaozai's fleshy arm. Before he stretched out his hand, at this moment, there was a sudden slamming sound of the door closing. Sugu turned around and saw York City closing the door. Although she is a girl with a funny brain, the little girl still politely called out, "Sister York City." Of course, Sugu wouldn't stop just because York City came back. He grabbed Xiaozai's arm, squeezed it, and said, "York City, you're back, how's it going?" York City said with a straight face, "So what are you doing, Admiral? You finally can't control your thoughts, are you going to attack the little girl, are you going to molest the little girl?" Sugu let go of Xiaozai's arm and said, "What are you talking about?" The ceiling fan in the office kept spinning and it was still very hot. York City opened her mouth without making a sound. According to her usual character, she was about to refute at this time, but she thought that her sister was outside the door. "Admiral, I want to tell you something important." "Say it." Sugu reluctantly left Xiaozai. It turns out I didn't tell you that I lost the shipboard. In fact, I didn't lose it. I know how could a ship girl lose her equipment casually. Except for deep-sea ship girls are invincible. York City said, how do you know? Well, forget it. I didn't lose the carrier-based aircraft, I just gave it away. As a gift? Are you so rich? Even if it is a whiteboard computer, it is not something that is deliberately given away casually. Actually, I met my sister, the Hornet, in Fujian City. All the equipment on her body was taken away by his admiral. I thought she was miserable, so I gave her the carrier-based aircraft. Sure enough, no matter who it is, they will take off the Hornet's carrier-based aircraft. After all, it is a B-25 carrying a Hornet, haha. Sugu smiled, and when he saw York City's ugly expression, he immediately put away his smile and said, you just met each other and called each other sisters. It should be faster. It's different. It feels very intimate at first glance. It's different from the Enterprise that came to the town hall before. You recognize sisters as sisters. Have you brought the Hero machine back? I brought the Hero aircraft back. The Hero aircraft is not my carrier-based aircraft. I just gave my own one as a gift. I am not a fool. Just give it away, that's what you said. Why did you close the door? York City said, I brought her back, Bumblebee. Doesn't that mean I have to have two Bumblebees? But you just said that the Hornet's carrier-based aircraft was stolen. It was the aircraft carrier with an admiral. How could you get it back? Sugu wanted to go to the window of the office, but York City held him back. Xiao Zhao and the others climbed to the window, lay on the windowsill and looked out. Facing Sugu's confused look, York City explained, she didn't come to join us. She originally had an admiral, but the admiral disappeared. No B-25 can stand it, she is a ship girl after all. But now that he had an admiral, he could not join his garrison. Sugu suddenly felt uninterested. What was the point of being able to see but not touch the giant bee? Sugu said, is she coming to play? She's here to study, she's just outside the governor's mansion. Go and meet her. I can't tell you the details at once, but you've made a lot of money anyway. Don't look like a pig, and don't talk nonsense. Sugu suddenly became angry. He even tolerated his sister-in-law Saratoga wearing only a shirt. How could she act like a pig to a bumblebee? No matter how imageless he is in front of his ship girl, Sugu still has the image of a serious admiral when outsiders are around. The conversation lasted only a short time, and then Sugu brushed his hair and straightened his shirt. Just as he was about to go out, Xiaozai leaned by the window and said, Bumblebee. I know. Sugu said this, opened the door, walked out of the office, and saw several girls. The person at the front, the girl with long blonde hair, must be Bumblebee. Her long blonde hair was tied into a single ponytail. It was very long, but not as long as the game portrait. After all, in reality, long hair won't float forever. If it's too long, it looks a bit ugly, and it's very troublesome to wash your hair. There is also a girl with long brown hair and a pink ponytail next to her, but she has no idea who she is. Next to them, Atlanta, with short hair, stood there, looking familiar to them. In front of her sister, York City finally had the appearance of a sister. She introduced, this is the Hornet, this is Northampton, and this is the Raiders. Then York City introduced Sugu awkwardly and awkwardly. She said, this is our admiral. In their class, the admiral was the first to graduate among the new admirals. He is a very nice person. Bumblebee, I will give you the ship carrier-based aircraft. You said no, saying that my admiral disagreed, but our admiral has agreed. You don't have a carrier-based aircraft, and you usually have to ask others to borrow them if you want to practice carrier-based aircraft. Now you have your own. It's fine with you. That admiral is different. Our admiral will never take the ship girl's things casually. If you have your B-25 on you, our admiral will never take your B-25 away. After all, it is your child. Atlanta was listening in confusion, thinking, why should we explain this? Everyone is an admiral, and the Hornet's B-25. The attacker looked at Sugu's face and smiled happily. Northampton listened and kept praying in his heart, stop talking, stop talking. She kept winking at York City, but if York City really knew how to look at expressions, the livid expression on Bumblebee's face could already explain the problem very well. York City kept talking, and Sugu felt ashamed when he heard it. Sugu said, "Hello, my name is Sugu. Welcome to the Town Guard Mansion." Saying this, Sugu watched Bumblebee looking at him with his chin raised, leaning very close, as if he wanted to see his appearance clearly. Sugu's dull look made Bumblebee a little confused for a moment. He looked like his admiral, and he felt like he was his admiral as well. Why did he look like he didn't recognize him? Isn't he his own admiral? But seeing Atlanta with little tiger teeth and dimples next to him, the person in front of him must be his admiral. Hornet gritted his teeth and said, "I'd better return that carrier-based aircraft to you." "It doesn't matter. Since I gave it to you, I won't take it back. You are York City's sister. If you say anything about returning it to me, I will take it back. Unless you put the carrier-based aircraft underground, I will be embarrassed, otherwise I will have to refuse at least 3 times. Although it is just a whiteboard machine, apart from selling it for money, it can only be used as a training machine for everyone, and there is no way to send it to the battlefield. But selling money is already a very important attribute." It was not what he imagined. Sugu heard Bumblebee say, "I want a B-25. As he said that, Bumblebee looked at York City again. No wonder he always felt that York City gave people a very familiar feeling. At a glance, he felt that his sister should look like this. It turns out that she is her sister. She looked at York City, who was trying very hard to introduce her admiral, and thought to herself, "Sister, you have been deceived. I have known the guy in front of me for a long time. This is the admiral who took away my B-25. Sugu didn't say anything, thinking, I also want a B-25, what's the point of telling me? Besides, I won't give it to you if I have a B-25. Bumblebee said again, I want a B-25. Sugu then said, I don't have a B-25 either. So who did this kind of thing, who took my B-25 away, and who gave my B-25 to that Baichi? Bumblebee pointed to the pink woman next to him. Sugu was stunned, and Atlanta said funnily, Admiral, you really can't recognize that this is the Hornet from our garrison. The Hornet that you stripped off the bomber B-25 and then left in the dormitory. I remember you said that you forgot some things, especially your appearance. Your own Bumblebee? Sugu looked at Bumblebee again. He had a delicate appearance, an oval face, blonde hair and blue eyes, and was no taller than himself. An admiral's thoughts affect his own ship girls to a certain extent. There are many ship girls in the garrison. According to race, they should be Westerners and tall. In Sugu's imagination, the ship girl shouldn't be that tall, so although his ship girl is still tall, she won't really be as tall as many Western women. Sugu used to attend a party with the Prince of Wales for the same model of ship girls. The ship girls brought by Western admirals were generally taller than those brought by Eastern admirals. Even though she was the Prince of Wales, her height was still surpassed by the battleships of the Western admirals at the party. The Prince of Wales is more like a mixture of Chinese and Western descent, and his appearance is more in line with Sugu's imagination. At this time, Sugu saw Bumblebee. He completely matched his image of Bumblebee. He was really his own Bumblebee, but He wanted to say hello and say something like long time no see and welcome home when he suddenly saw Bumblebee raising his head and saying, "Take away my child and abandon everyone, Admiral should." Before Sugu could speak, he was greeted by a combination of punches. Drowsily, Sugu heard a lot of sounds. "Bumblebee, what are you doing?" "Don't worry about Northampton, that shit Admiral, I'll beat him to death." "So, Bumblebee, what's going on?" "It's very simple, York City, your Admiral is our Admiral, he was the one who stole the Hornets B-25 and gave it to the Raiders." "Raider? Where are you sticking your tongue out and what are you doing?" "Bumblebee, you're going to have to wear little shoes from now on. He stole my B-25. He is an Admiral. You will no longer have a dormitory to live in, so you will have to sleep in the woodshed. If he dares to do this, I will leave. You big-breasted bichi, you didn't say anything because you just wanted to see a joke." "It's none of my business." "Well, Admiral, it's okay, the attacker is here. Hug, chest pillow." "Northampton, why didn't you hold me back when you started?" he cried in confusion. "I didn't know you would dare to hit the Admiral." "Ah, what should I do?" It's okay. Your sister also kicked the Admiral and whipped her when we met. You two are really sisters." "Raider, what are you mumbling under your breath?" "Footsteps, what are you doing? Hornets, Northampton, Raiders, why are you here?" "Brother-in-law, why do you look like a shrimp?" "Sister Lexington." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 346. Upstairs from the office is the dormitory building, with Lexington and Saratoga walking downstairs. They first saw Bumblebee and the others, and were surprised when they saw Sugu, who was hunched over. As the culprit this time, Bumblebee aggressively wanted to teach his shit Admiral a lesson. However, it only lasted for a minute. When she came back to her senses and realized that it was her Admiral, she fell into panic. "This may be the place where I want to live in the future, but if I beat the Admiral, I will be in the shoes of others in the future. As a ship girl, I never thought of leaving the garrison." He fell down before I even exerted any force. Bumblebee's combination punches were not very powerful, that was a fact. If Bumblebee were to use force, it would be enough to beat Sugu into a pulp. However, even though Bumblebee only used the power of an ordinary person, it still made Sugu uncomfortable. "Brother-in-law, why do you look like a shrimp?" After saying this, Saratoga narrowed his eyes and looked at Bumblebee, and said, "You are a ship girl, and my brother-in-law is just an ordinary person. Let me try it with you, I don't use any force." "Well, you can do it, Raider. Let go of brother-in-law." Lexington said, "What's going on?" York City saw Saratoga rolling up her sleeves and quickly stood in front of her sister. The younger sister has become a real younger sister. Although she still hasn't figured out the specific things in her head along the way, it does not prevent her from standing up as a sister. Bumblebee twirled his fingers uneasily and muttered, "It was obviously the Admiral who took other people's equipment first. If the town government wants to develop, it must gather equipment, and everyone needs to pay. Every time a deep-sea flagship appears, and every time my sister and I go on expeditions, we get injured. What did we say? You stay in the townhouse all day and eat nothing. Big B." Bumblebee wanted to refute, but Sugu finally recovered at this time. He waved his hand and said, "It's okay, it's okay. Of course it's okay, I didn't use any force in the first place." Then she noticed that the people around her were staring at her, and Bumblebee's voice became smaller and smaller, but her mouth refused to admit defeat. She had a York City-like character. Saratoga glared at Bumblebee and put her palms on Sugu's back. Since her brother-in-law said it was okay, then forget it. Then she whispered, "Brother-in-law, your kidneys can't be damaged." Sugu immediately looked at his sister-in-law and yelled angrily, "Your kidneys were damaged." With a strong voice, Saratoga nodded, a lifetime of happiness finally not ruined. Sugu rubbed his chest and stood up. The combination of punches from Bumblebee was indeed quite fierce. Of course, she still has some sense of discretion and won't attack the vital points. If you want to tease your vaginal legs, then you must call someone to remove the hornet on the spot. Sugu sat on a bench under the magnolia tree, tilting his head and looking at several people. The attacker's pink hair was tied up with a ribbon. For some unknown reason, the ribbon stuck up like bunny ears. Looking further down, it is reminiscent of the costume-changing pop-up in the Raiders game, and it cannot be ignored. As a professional bomber in the game, the Raiders were entrusted with important tasks, including bombers A-2, B-25, and tallboy bombs. Although before he abandoned the pit, as each aircraft carrier was modified or its skills were added, the Raiders had actually fallen behind in terms of strength. It's just that at that time, I had entered the grossing period and had no activities, so I was too lazy to change my equipment. The attacker said, "Admiral, do you want some chocolate?" "Don't eat that," was Saratoga's voice, and the attacker was being watched eagerly by Saratoga. The girl with long brown hair, wearing a white dress and red stockings, looking like a lady, is Northampton. Judging from the game's illustrations, he looks somewhat heroic. Reality itself is no longer a game, and it will no longer work if we copy it mechanically from a game. At this time, Northampton showed a gentle smile. She was a very beautiful girl, but she ignored her pretty appearance and looked a bit passerby. Sugu looked around. Zeppelin was beside her, and Atlanta was laughing. She was also someone who was afraid of chaos in the world. In addition, Xiaozai and several other little girls were gathered around, but the little girls didn't care too much about who came back. They just followed and watched for several minutes, and then saw that Sugu was fine. "Admiral, we went swimming." Xiaozai hugged the small swimming ring. "Go ahead." "Admiral, look. Utopia, let's go, let's eat later." "I haven't reviewed the fantasy swimsuit yet, and I haven't looked at Sukaf's swimsuit yet, and I heard it's not a children's swimsuit at all." There were no little girls' swimsuits to look at, and no opportunity to accompany the little girls to the beach. Compared to eating Bumblebee's set of combo punches, this is obviously a more irritating thing, enough to make people's hearts bleed. But the little girl is leaving and it's hard to keep her. Sugu looked at Bumblebee and York City and said, "How did you meet?" Bumblebee's grievances could not be explained clearly, but then Northampton told the whole story. After Northampton finished explaining the matter, Sugu looked at York City and thought, if York City had mentioned this matter earlier, they might have been able to guess it. Bumblebee was stripped of his equipment, and the Admiral disappeared again. This situation should be rare except for himself. York City doesn't tell the truth. "I'm afraid you'll harass others." The Hornet made a mistake and seemed a little honest and silent, and then York City defended its sister. The Admiral did too much in the past. He took away someone's carrier-based aircraft, not counting it. He also called someone a big B. Stealing the carrier-based aircraft, that's a special need. And the Hornet is a big ass, this must be admitted. It's a charming thing, and it's not a joke, well, it's a joke. You grab the carrier-based aircraft, and the Hornet hits you. You can't retaliate. It's even. Having no intention of revenge, Sugu said, "Forget it, it's okay, just come back." It was all right. Zeppelin walked away. Atlanta went to find his sister. Bumblebee said, "Admiral, can you return the B-25 to me? Ask the Raiders about that." The attacker said, "No. Well, I listened to the Admiral. Saratoga whispered, little bitch. Bumblebee said, the B-25 originally belonged to me. Admiral, you said you wouldn't steal other people's equipment. Sugu said, my room is still occupied by Bazai. She has more things than I do. She was originally your wedding ship. Sugu kept silent and said, speaking of which, you are back. You can choose your own room. You are welcome. Of course Bumblebee sleeps in the same room as me, my room is huge, York City said. Bumblebee hesitated to speak, thinking, although you are my sister, I want to sleep with Northampton. The jingle bell rang at this time. Sugu looked to the side and saw Prince Eugen, who had just come out of the cafeteria, wearing a white chef's hat. Prince Eugen looked this way and came over. You are. She was not familiar with Bumblebee and the others. Northampton had been trying to steal her job before. There was not much surprise for their return, and they acted a bit ordinary. Admiral, it's time to eat. Eat, eat, Prince Eugen's craftsmanship, I tell you, praise it. Admiral, there is no need to praise me. Sugu walked in front to greet everyone, and Lexington walked beside him. The two people were talking, and Sugu saw Bumblebee approaching. Bumblebee looked pitiful and said, Admiral, really, the B-25 should be mine. Sugu looked at Bumblebee's pitiful expression, remained silent for a moment, and said, you have the right to own the B-25, others only have the right to use it. Hearing Sugu's promise, Bumblebee happily ran to the raiders, stretched out a hand, and said, Raiders, the Admiral said that I have the right to own the B-25, and you only have the right to use it. Now, you take the B-25 back to me. The attacker said, unless the Admiral tells me, I won't give it to, well, the Admiral has the right to dispose of it, you have the right to own it, and I have the right to use it, it just works. Bumblebee feels a little confused, these and so on are so confusing and I don't understand them. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 347. When the weather is hot, generally no one wants to do outdoor activities. Usually, only the little girls like to run around unscrupulously in the governor's mansion, or pull the roses climbing on the wall, or pick up tree branches, imitating the martial arts heroes in Sugu's stories, and having fun. It seemed a little quiet inside the governor's mansion today, but it wasn't that they were no longer naughty. Their activity today is not to have fun in the town hall. They have changed into swimsuits and have to have fun in the water today. Even if you are a ship girl, you should be able to float on the water if you wear a ship suit. If it sinks into the water, it will be really fatal. If you don't use ship equipment, you can indeed dive, but when it comes to swimming, it still depends on your own level. The only ones that are not affected are submarines and artillery submarines. After all, they rely on diving and swimming. At noon, when we had lunch, the little girls who went out to play did not come back. Although they said they wanted to have lunch, once they had fun, they forgot everything. At noon, you can eat whatever you want, and in the evening, I'll help you with the wind and wash away the dust. Richelieu came just a few days earlier than you. Bumblebee, I recommend you go to that window and try it. It tastes good. Yeah. Bumblebee, don't believe the Admiral's nonsense. That window is specially set up to store counterattack dishes. Give counterattack some credit. Besides, counterattack heard what you were saying. After dinner, it was left to York City to take Bumblebee, Northampton, and the raiders to visit the townhouse and arrange their settlement. York City was very familiar with the townhouse anyway. York City took his sister Bumblebee to visit everywhere in the townhouse, including the warehouse, canteen, activity room, lighthouse. I remember I told you about this wishing wall a few days ago. Take a look at what's written on it. How do you feel after reading it? This wall was hit by a car once. The wall was not broken, but the car was. Although the old car is quite bad, you can usually drive it for a ride. It's a pity. Fortunately, there are 2 yachts in the governor's mansion. Traveling is quite convenient. There is a yacht originally, and 1 yacht was brought back by the Prince of Wales. This is my room. There is only 1 bed. You sleep with me first. Otherwise, we will move a bed to the unoccupied room next to it. There are many rooms in the governor's mansion. Where can I live here? The pot of orchids was moved from the admiral's room, as well as the floor lamp. Northampton and Raiders, tell me which room you like. It's best to choose a fully furnished and single-room matching room. It was left to York City to arrange food, clothing, housing, and transportation for Bumblebee and the others. They were talking to Atlanta and the others, and Sugu finally found time. Even though Bumblebee and the others are back, the town government will not revolve around them, they are still doing their own things. On the golden beach outside the governor's mansion, a large parasol was placed on the beach. There was a table and a deck chair under the parasol. There was also sour plum juice and ice-cold milk on the table. On the seaside in the distance, a little girl is running and someone is building a sand castle. Although Sugu didn't have the chance to play with the little girl in the sea, he would certainly run over to have a look before they finished their activities. Imagination is wearing a blue, white, and red striped chikuzui. Except for not wearing a sailor uniform and knee-high socks, her appearance is somewhat similar to the pop-up in the game. The one with the best figure among the little girls is Sukov, even U81 is completely unable to defeat her. Compared to U81's Shikushue, Sukov is wearing goggles and her swimsuit is much more erotic. She noticed that Sugu was looking at her and his face turned red. "Admiral, why don't you come and play together? Admiral, do you want to play with Starfish? U47 gave it to us." U47 waved to Sugu and she smiled happily. Sugu saw Helena sitting on the beach and said, "What are you doing here?" "Lifeguard, well, the Admiral doesn't need to take Bumblebee and the others with him. York City wouldn't let me. She said she was upset when she looked at me. Being so disliked by my own ship girl. Thanks to me being so good to her, I forgot about the Admiral when I had a sister. So you came here specifically, without wearing swimming trunks, instead of coming to swim, to see the little girl? Your true nature has been exposed. Helena, your mouth is getting more and more venomous. Am I that kind of person?" Helena's long blue hair fell behind her back. She tilted her head and looked at Sugu and said, "Isn't it?" Sugu shook his head firmly. "Then put some sunscreen on me." Helena was originally sitting on the beach with her hands on her knees, so she couldn't see it. Now that she stood up, Sugu couldn't help but praise Helena's swimsuit, which was breathtaking. Okay, as soon as he finished speaking, Sugu suddenly thought that he was becoming more and more loyal to his desires. Helena spread a beach mat on the beach. Before she could lie down, Sugu heard a very deliberate and loud sound. "Brother-in-law." Sugu turned around and saw Saratoga, who was wearing a fashionable straw hat, sunglasses, a bikini, and holding a skateboard. She went to Sichuan's show yesterday. She obviously bought a lot of things for herself alone. Of course it's nice to have my sister-in-law here, but it also means that she must not do anything extraordinary to Helena, which is disappointing. In the afternoon, the Hornet was finally able to get its own bomber, the B-25. When she took over the bomber B-25 from the Raiders, she almost shed tears. The bomber that accompanied him at first was taken away without even using it once after he woke up. The brand new carrier-based aircraft was snatched away and turned into second-hand goods when they came back. However, Bumblebee's palms were trembling when he touched the wings and propellers of the B-25. Sugu said from the side, "I spent a lot of effort to help you get it from the attacker. Even so, it was extremely easy to get it from the attackers. Anyway, there is no battle, and the B-25 has become Bumblebee's obsession. As the admiral, Sugu still has to take good care of it, and then snatch it from Bumblebee's hands when he needs to attack. Bumblebee said, "You are my best admiral. A prodigal son never pays back, and a bad person only needs to do a good deed once in a while, which is enough for others to be grateful." Seeing Bumblebee's innocent smile once made Sugu feel ashamed. Hornet and York City stood by the dock, which was the most ideal place to fly carrier-based aircraft. At this time, the Hornet put the carrier-based aircraft B-25 into the ship, and the whole action gave off a solemn and sacred feeling. The flight deck aimed at the evening sunset, and soon after, the bomber B-25 took off swaying. "Sister, this is my carrier-based aircraft, my child." Tears were already flowing out, and Bumblebee was jumping. "It looks very powerful." York City has not tried it yet, but has heard of the reputation of the B-25. "Of course it's awesome. Those people have divided the attributes of carrier-based aircraft. Lexington's BTD-1 destroyer only has 10 bombing points, but my B-25 has a full 20 bombing point, although it is compared to a -2 is still a bit worse, but the B-25 is strong enough, and the most important thing is, that is my child." York City thought thoughtfully and said, "Such a powerful bomber should have a handsome appearance. How do you think it would be more handsome to fly?" Bumblebee was confused and said, "Handsome. Snap your fingers and then appear in a ship's uniform. It feels very cool. I have seen Bismarck and the Prince of Wales quarreling in the cafeteria. The Prince of Wales was sitting at the table with his face in one hand, and she knocked on the table. And then a ship suit appeared, and 3 turrets appeared, aiming at the Bismarck. They would occasionally quarrel, but they would not fight. Anyway, I saw it once and thought it was very handsome. But you must think of a good idea, otherwise it will look like Firefly waved her magic wand, and then shouted, 'Magical girl transformed,' and then her ship suit appeared, and that scene was particularly funny." York City added, "There are also lines to appear on. I will date someone." While controlling the carrier-based aircraft to hover in the sky, Hornet said, "I am older than someone, it doesn't sound good to me. You should say, 'My lord.'" York City also has no talent. Bumblebee, this name is not cool in the first place. It's like a bee or a wasp. It reminds me of bugs. You said Bumblebee, I remembered the story the Admiral told, the story of Bumblebee, Optimus Prime and the Decepticons. I've never heard of Optimus Prime and the Decepticons. Are they also ship girls? It's not a ship girl, it's an Autobot. If you want to hear that story, I can tell it to you tonight. Can a car turn into a person? Ships can turn into people, let alone Autobots. Maybe in another world, even a shrine or a hot spring can turn into a person. This is what the Admiral told me. The Admiral just robbed my carrier-based aircraft without saying anything to me." Bumblebee said, feeling a little unhappy. "I met the Admiral when he was at his worst, and my sister York City met the Admiral when he was at his best. It was really unfair." "Bumblebee, have you seen the Enterprise?" "No. We 3 sisters are still one company away. Speaking of which, I know an Enterprise without an Admiral. If the Admiral can take care of her, we 3 sisters will be together. Can be built. It's hard to build. It's harder to catch. That Enterprise, I think he's a nice person. He's very smart and articulate. He can talk to the Admiral quite well. We are just strangers, and they don't think we are sisters." York City pursed his lips and said, "I'm just saying, well, wait, can you play with the B-25 for me?" Sugu and Saratoga were sitting on the steps in front of the town hall, looking at York City and Bumblebee. Sugu said, "Northampton and Leipzig are together, the Raiders and Santiago are together, and 3 more people are back. How much has been accomplished without our goal of finding all our companions? Saratoga said, there are many, many more, Essex, Colorado, in short, many, many more. The Hornet looked so happy when he was controlling the B-25. In terms of bombing alone, the most powerful one is probably the Raider. Saratoga leaned on Sugu's shoulder and said, give me the B-25 and a -2. As long as someone cooperates with me, I will be stronger than the Raiders. As long as besides me, there are for 2 aircraft carriers, only 2 people can cooperate with me. But before that, I still need to get familiar with the operation. Sugu turned to look at Saratoga, are you able to switch skills at will? Reality is more convenient than games. Gaga, you are promoting your Robin theory again. Lexington sat down on the other side of Sugu and said, Admiral, are you watching Bumblebee practice? Look, I actually like the sunset here better. I don't like the sunset, I like sitting next to the Admiral. Lexington's words are always irresistible. He uses the simplest language to say the most touching words of love. A sister is a sister, and she is many times more powerful than Saratoga, who is constantly causing trouble. Seeing his sister, Saratoga said, Sister, let's take away the B-25 and a -2. You want the A-2, and I want the B-25. I want both. Raider and Bumblebee shuddered simultaneously. Lexington said, the Admiral is always with Giorgio recently. Sugu thought to himself, you have already got it, now of course you have to attack the sister-in-law. Lexington looked at Sugu's expression and said, I always feel like you are thinking about bad things. Saratoga smirked secretly from the side. Admiral, you are here. Sugu turned around and saw Xiaozai standing behind him. He said, Xiaozai, come here. Xiaozai pouted and walked in front of Sugu, and Sugu held Xiaozai in his arms. Lexington said, there is such a tacit understanding, the little girl who is willing to compromise, and the adult who is a Lolita control. Sugu laughed, remembering the first time he met Xiaozai in that dilapidated garrison. At that time, I wanted to take care of Xiaozai, but Xiaozai just thought he was cute. He really didn't have any sense of responsibility as an admiral. Even after I found the little house and heard the stories, I didn't immediately set out to find it. Instead, I lived with the little house for a while before I thought of leaving. There was no TV or internet. At that time, it was a great feeling to watch the sunset while holding a small house. The angelic little house can indeed touch people's hearts. The little house allows one to take the first step. A ship girl without a past has no future if she doesn't go. I took the first step, met San Juan, then met Lexington, and now we are here. Xiaozai sat in Sugu's arms, stretched out his hand and pulled Sugu's face in retaliation, and said, I heard the Admiral tell the story of White Rabbit candy. Lexington looked at Sugu and Xiaozai and thought that the experience of 2 people living together and being close to each other must be great, but it was a pity that he didn't have the chance. Admiral, what are you doing? It was a dreamy voice, and she came over. Sugu said, look at the sunset. What's so good about the sunset? She said as she sat next to Lexington. You are hindering my cleaning, that was the retort voice. She was indeed wearing a maid uniform and holding a broom. Sugu said, stop scanning. If you fight back, sit next to Saratoga. Don't sit down anymore, I have to work. Counterattack took a few steps with the broom and started sweeping from the steps below. Zeppelin originally wanted to come over and see what was going on with the Hornet's bomber, the B-25. She watched the B-25 hovering in the sky, thinking about borrowing it for use sometime, and then she saw a row of people sitting on the steps in front of the governor's mansion. What on earth are they doing? Bismarck stood next to Zeppelin. Apart from the fact that they were in the same garrison, she really didn't have many friends in the garrison, and Zeppelin was one of them. Have no idea. Firefly and Amethyst then came over, and Firefly said, "What are you doing? Summon Thulhu? Or Arli, when the stars align?" Amethyst has become obsessed with this recently, always pestering Sugu. Amethyst Quartz didn't finish her words, and then she was hit on the head by Firefly standing next to her. Amethyst is the second best and can easily cause trouble. Firefly still remembers going on an expedition with the other party, and then due to a mistake, he ended up living far away by himself. Fortunately, I met the Admiral there, otherwise I don't know what would have happened. At that time, the garrison that took him in was attacked. Later, he left with the Admiral. He heard that everyone in the garrison wanted to leave. She thought of the two Atago sisters. It was really hard in the garrison without the Admiral. She wondered where they were now. Firefly and Amethyst Quartz sat down next to Fan Xiang, and then someone else came over, including Atlanta, who held his face in his hands, and Javelin, who was wearing cool clothes. Time passed slowly, when the Hornet put away its carrier-based aircraft and prepared to go back. She looked back and saw a row of people sitting behind her. The scene almost shocked her. Sugu put his head on Xiao Zai's shoulder, close to Xiao Zai's face. Seeing Bumblebee, he said, "Bumblebee, you are the most powerful. I leave the task of saving the world to you. What are you doing? You are causing trouble out of nowhere." Saratoga said, "Bumblebee, you are the most talented aircraft carrier I have ever seen. You." Lexington would not follow the nonsense, and Xiang shouted from the side, "Come on, Sister Bumblebee, #1 in the world. What the hell are you doing?" "Nothing, really nothing." Saratoga looked at Bumblebee's suspicious look and laughed. "So there is no reason why I like to be by Admiral's side, it's just that it feels the best." Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai-De Rong Yan. Chapter 348. Sugu summarized his day's experience. "In the morning, I got up from Lexington's arms and immediately saw the Prince of Wales with long blonde hair and counter-attack holding a basin. Everyone's rooms are so close together, which makes people worry about the sound insulation effect. After breakfast, the little girl was clamoring to go swimming. Anyway, she is a ship girl, she is not afraid even if the great white shark comes, and Sugu agrees to it. After that, York City came back with Bumblebee. He originally wanted to comment on the little girl's swimsuits one by one, but there was no chance. What makes people happy is that Sugu should have taken a few people to visit the town's mansion, but York City took on the responsibility of the tour guide. Sugu finally had a chance to go to the beach. The little house was so cute, Thatcher only knew how to play dog pawing. It is necessary to mention that Helena in the water state was really great. In the evening, I teased Bumblebee, and then it was night time. The town government is not short of money now, so there is no need to be too frugal. Sugu had his own salary, and the garrison occasionally had expedition missions and received large rewards. Because of the relationship with the Kanyang headquarters, if there is something that cannot be handled there, we can take action here, which is another sum of money. Sugu has no interest in construction and does not need to spend a lot of money to purchase resources like many admirals. Construction is a bottomless pit, and it is not 100% successful. There was no persistence in my heart, and I failed to get the recognition of those memories and history in steel. Maybe you can only watch one movie and then fall short. There are two examples far and near. As a young master of a large company, Mu Cheng has a lot of money, but now he only has 3 destroyers. Recently, it seems that I want to build it again. Unfortunately, communication is not convenient now, so I don't know the specific situation. In addition, Admiral Tian Hao in the county has been running the garrison for many years, and now only Kaohsiung is there. Not building anything, Sugu didn't buy any of the luxury yachts, luxurious sofas, or crystal diamonds. Although the governor's mansion can't hold a small banquet every 3 days or a big banquet every 5 days, with new companions back, there is still no problem in having a big banquet. The dinner was mainly taken care of by Prince Eugen and the 4 cat-eared sisters. Everything was going well at first, but they counterattacked as guests and came up with their masterpieces. As the admiral, Sugu must stand up when everyone hesitates. I believe in counterattack. In the past, the difference in quality was just due to the ingredients. There were only fried fish and potatoes, and it was difficult for a clever woman to cook without rice. Now that the ingredients are abundant, the pizza made by counterattack is still very good. Look, there are shrimps, tomatoes, and corn. And the fish head, I said, can't you fight back without releasing the fish? She is working hard to counterattack towards the strongest maid. It must be admitted that although her cooking skills were not very good in the past, but after constant training and encouragement from Akagi, my skills are still not that good. Some habits cannot be changed. Even with the help of Lexington and San Juan, and even setting strict standards for adding salt, the counterattack still can't help but add more. Taste it, he countered. Sugu picked up a piece of pizza, put it in his mouth, lightly bit a corner, and said, "It's improved a lot." The counterattack showed a satisfied smile, but Lexington next to him showed a helpless smile. She knew exactly what Sugu meant by his words. There was progress, but the taste was still bad. "Admiral, don't you want to finish? A little of this delicious food for each person." I knew it didn't taste good. Sugu wanted to comfort and fight back, to be a protagonist who would not make anyone sad, but after thinking about it, he gave up. The pizza counterattack ended in vain, and Sugu continued to taste the braised prawns. York City and Bumblebee sat next to him, and they asked, "Admiral, you are familiar with the Enterprise, right?" So. There is contact between the two parties. Although the other party is the leader of the ship girl headquarters, Sugu does not need to fawn over. The character of the Enterprise is not bad. Although it feels sharp-tongued, being able to sit in that position depends not only on its strength as an aircraft carrier. Persistent and pursuing, but not stubborn, he is well-rounded, knows when to stop joking occasionally, and will not really say anything too extreme. Then can you pick her up? Sugu stared at York City, making York City feel uncomfortable. Sugu then said, "You are dreaming." York City whispered, "There are so many people in the garrison, you must be very good at fishing. You see, even instructor Zeppelin used to teach in the academy, but now he is not in the garrison. Zeppelin is not something that can be fished out by oneself at all, it all depends on Akagi and Bismarck. I can't even fish out the rookie Colossus. Salvaging a boat is really not that easy." York City usually acted alone and had no one to accompany her, but now she has a younger sister, so the two of them are just right. Sugu shouted, "Key Berlin, York City has something to tell you." York City and Bumblebee walked away, and Sugu saw Baizai again with a surprised look on her face, and she almost hit a pillar. "Is that person just now Bumblebee? Why did she appear in the town hall? When did she come? I saw it at noon. I still don't believe it. It's real. It's so strange and magical." Sugu said, "What have you been doing all day? Don't you pay attention to anything? You are hopeless." Bizai didn't take it seriously and whispered, "I heard that Bumblebee and Northampton are Lily." "That's not the case. Bumblebee and Northampton are a couple." Sugu knows that, but it won't be as bad as Lily's. Baizai nodded firmly and said, "That's right. I think so too." Sugu turned around and said, "Gia, don't join in the fun with Baizai." Saratoga tugged on Sugu's sleeve, motioned Sugu to look aside, and said, "Brother-in-law, look at Raider, she ate dessert until her face was covered in cream. She was trying to be cute. It must have been accidental. The attacker was deliberately being cute, and Sugu only confirmed it at night. At night, Sugu passed by the attacker's room and saw that there were many messy things in the attacker's room. These things were all brought out from the warehouse, such as sheets, towels, quilts, wash basins. Although the rooms in the governor's mansion have been decorated and the electricity and water are connected, it is impossible to prepare everyone's rooms at once. Originally, it was winter and we needed quilts and thick quilts, but now it's summer and the bed should be covered with mats. It's troublesome to change things around. The furniture, beds, tables, and chairs in the rooms in the governor's mansion are all ready, but other things, such as quilts, blankets, etc., need to be picked up and laid out again. Sugu saw the attacker sitting on the bed without a mat, and the messy things around him were not tidied up. Is your room so messy? Don't know how to sort it out, raiders are stupid. Saying this, the attacker knocked on her head. Her appearance was naturally sweet, and such an action did not feel artificial at all. With round eyes and curved eyelashes, the cute girl is waiting for help. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 349. There are many rooms in the Tutelary mansion. When initially designing, it was considered that each person had a room. Sugu calculated his own ship girl and needed to prepare hundreds of rooms. The town's government building does not occupy a large area, but there are several dormitory buildings. There are several dormitory buildings, but except for the one where Sugu lives, the rest of the dormitory buildings are currently unoccupied. Nowadays, only the little girls in the town hall like to hold candles and run into those buildings at night, as if they are having a haunted house adventure. There are many rooms in a dormitory building, but it is impossible to clean so many rooms every time. I have never been in them since they were renovated. When new people move in, it often needs to be organized and cleaned again. Most of the people in the garrison were just looking after their own little piece of land. Only Counterattack was fighting conscientiously as a maid, and she actually had her little follower Fletcher. It's just that Fletcher is slightly less effective than fighting back. She still has 3 troublesome sisters to take care of. Sigsby and Sullivan were fine, but Thatcher in particular couldn't tell the difference. For example, she wiped her hands on her sister's apron, but she wiped her hands on Counterattack's apron. Therefore, it was also Counterattack's responsibility as a maid to discipline the disobedient destroyers in the garrison. Counterattack mainly takes care of Sugu and the Prince of Wales, and then Firefly and Amethyst. Everyone is close and distant, so of course the priority is to take care of their own children. Javelin and Queen are already young girls and do not need much care. Then her task is to manage the hygiene in the entire town hall. She occasionally feels uncomfortable. Sugu actually has no requirements for her, but she often rushes to do things. Counterattack usually tidies the room for the new companions. As for why she didn't come over, Sugu frowned. Sugu suddenly thought that during dinner, San Juan whispered in his ear, "It took a long time to prepare this plate of pizza until it was put in the oven. No wonder she insisted on cleaning the house when she asked her to sit with her." It turned out that she was delaying her work. So there's another question. If San Juan hadn't helped handle the finishing work, would the counterattack pizza have been burnt in the end? As expected, one cannot have too much confidence in the counterattack's cooking skills. Knowing her shame and then being brave, she usually counterattacked in the evening when she had nothing to do, so she would improve her cooking skills alone in the cafeteria, although only Akage was with her at that time. There was no room prepared for the newlyweds this time, probably because they forgot about it. Since there was no way to help in counterattack, Sugu didn't mind helping. In the town hall, Lexington can handle most things. All he needs to do is sign, like a seal. In terms of diplomacy, He often takes the initiative, but usually nothing happens. Also, the people in the garrison like to say, "Don't tell the admiral what you do, just stay in the garrison. If you don't do something, you always feel that you have to do something." Wasted. Assaulter, don't you even know how to lay out a mat? You can just lay it out. At most, you won't be able to tell the front and back sides. Won't. You should be able to put the thin quilt into the quilt cover. Just pull the two corners of the thin quilt and the quilt cover at the same time, then stand up and shake. Won't. Sugu looked at the attacker with suspicion. He didn't believe that the attacker couldn't even do this. "I've heard for a long time that the raiders are opening a candy store. It's okay for a candy store. It's impossible not to clean up a room." Sugu doesn't believe this. The attacker's room was on the same floor as his. The door was wide open and the lights were bright. Could it be that he was specially designed to let him discover? Well, he felt like he was the famous detective Sugu. Sugu said, "If you don't know how to do this, how can you open a store? The store is losing money, so I make money by completing tasks for others. I have many good children, and I will destroy them all, no matter what kind of enemies they are." Sugu remained silent, and the attacker smiled, stuck out his tongue, and said, "Don't look at me like that, I'm a good boy." "Well, have you been discovered?" "Admiral, forgive me. What should I do if the ship girl acts cute?" "Of course I forgive her, of course I work honestly." The mat is spread on the bed, and the thin quilt is stuffed into the quilt cover. Although the weather is hot, the feet and belly also need to be covered. Things that are generally needed in the room, such as buckets in the bathroom, towels, and toothbrushes also need to be hung and put away. The admiral moves very quickly. Of course. York City said that the admiral is a good man. I still didn't believe it, but now I finally believe it. York City actually said good things about me. In the past, Sugu was not used to acting too familiar with strangers. Because of the ship girl, sometimes he really forced himself to talk. Now, he feels more and more familiar with himself. Even if it is a girl he has never met before, as long as it is his ship girl, he can quickly change his identity. "I have a store in Fujian City. There are many things in the store, but it's a pity that I couldn't bring them over." "Fujian City? It's not far from here. You can just drive there on a yacht. You can bring all your luggage here at once." "Admiral, can you come with me? It's so troublesome to pack things." "Are you busy?" But since his ship girl asked, Sugu of course agreed. Bumblebee and York City bought a lot of things before they came back. Those clothes are still there and they were not brought over. "Does Bumblebee live with you?" "No, she just comes to my place to act for me every once in a while, even though she loses every time." Sugu knew very well about his own raiders. The A-2 and B-25 were also equipped with tallboy bombs, plus they were at full level. Think about the Hornet again. At the beginning, it was only equipped with the bomber B-25 at the first level. After being stripped off, it was completely without a piece of equipment. It was probably until York City gave away its own whiteboard carrier aircraft. If not, with a little bit of equipment, who would be able to appreciate York City's whiteboard carrier-based aircraft? It actually doesn't take much time to help tidy up the room. Of course Sugu won't even help mop the floor. This kind of thing is left to the attacker himself. The raider said, "If you let your guard down a little, the Hornet would win several times." For example, this time York City borrowed all the hero machines from Lexington. If it weren't for the fact that the Hornet couldn't control many hero machines, even if it's very difficult for me to win. There was also the time before when she came over with the carrier-based aircraft Seafang and Meteor. If I wasn't careful at that time, the ship might have capsized. Sugu noticed the previous words, and then without turning around for a while, he said doubtfully, "Rabbit, Rabbit is your friend. Our Rabbit, wasn't that nickname given to you by Admiral? Sugu recited it silently in his mind, and then said, the Rabbit you are talking about is the light aircraft carrier USS Princeton. The Princeton, a professional fish fry, was launched after the Flying Eagle, carrying the Twin Meteor and the Sea Fang. Its main role is to work with her little partner, the low-speed aircraft carrier and the light aircraft carrier Unicorn, to work together with the deep-sea twin aircraft carriers. Sugu asked in confusion, where is Rabbit now? She used to do a street magician performance, which was a hat trick, where she would make rabbits or doves out of hats. I was not with her. When I met her again later, she was a dealer. There are not many nowadays. Have warships been converted into luxury cruise ships? Those luxury cruise ships have all kinds of luxurious decorations and various entertainment facilities. The decorations of five-star hotels include presidential suites, sightseeing elevators, and there's a library and even an outdoor swimming pool. There are many people in the world who don't have money. Many of them can't even eat a piece of chocolate. I saw how pitiful the children were and gave some as a gift. Later, many children came and couldn't afford to give it away. But the rich people are very rich. Luxury cruise ships don't matter anymore. There is a casino on the first floor of the luxury cruise ship. The casino is definitely the most profitable. Roulette, slot machines, all kinds of things. The luxury cruise ship docked at the Fujian City Pier. Hornet and Northampton came to see me. I have been there once. Rabbit works as a dealer there. In fact, besides being a dealer, she also does other things, that is, escorting luxury cruise ships. After all, if a ship like that is attacked by a deep-sea ship girl, it will be fatal. All of them are wealthy people. And the senior officials, I heard that there are 10 ship girls for the escort alone. 10 ship girls, a lot of garrison can't come up with it. But yes, the value created by such a luxury cruise ship may be greater than the benefits created by a township or county. The cruise ship is full of celebrities, so inviting 10 ship girls is not a difficult task. After all, the gap between the rich and the poor is even more terrifying now. Luxurious cruise ship, beautiful dealer, okay, Rabbit, don't let anyone stop me, I'm going to find you next. Consultant Sue asked, so what luxury cruise ship is Rabbit on? The attacker didn't seem to hear Sugu's words. She continued, Alaska and Guam seem to be there too. It seems that everyone was introduced to work there because they knew many big shots when they were lawyers in Washington. Assaulter, you don't need to say anything, there is only one question now. What is the name of that luxury cruise ship? We are going to find Rabbit. Looking for rabbits, raiders are also rabbits, hee, well, I don't remember the name of that luxury cruise ship. You can ask them, Northampton or Bumblebee. Sugu said, okay, I'll go find them. The attacker sat on the edge of the bed, put his hands on the bed, kicked his legs like a child, and said, hey, Admiral, the attacker has been a great help, what's the reward? Before Sugu could speak, a voice rang out, here's the reward. A panda doll suddenly hit the attacker on the head, and Saratoga looked gloomy in her nightgown. Sugu was stunned for a while, and then he saw another figure running in quickly, and he quickly threw himself on the bed and picked up the panda doll. The figure was Xiaozai. Xiaozai held the panda doll towards Saratoga and said angrily, that's my doll, you can't throw it away. Sugu could already imagine the specific process. Xiaozai was holding a panda doll in his room, and then Saratoga came to look for him. He saw no one, came out again, and that was it. Not long after, while walking on the corridor looking for Bumblebee, Saratoga said, brother-in-law is something that belongs to my sister and me. It's so scary that my sister-in-law has awakened the attribute of appearing at critical moments 100% of the time. Sugu felt the softness of his sister-in-law's chest with his arms, and inexplicably thought of a word, but bang, but his sister-in-law seemed to have the attribute of being interrupted at critical moments. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 350. At night, near the dormitory building on the side of the mountain forest, you can hear the sound of waves mixed with the chirping of insects. Warm lights are on in the corridor, and these lights stay on all night long. Xiaozai took the lead and ran back to her room holding her panda doll. She was dissatisfied with Sister Saratoga, who violently took away her panda doll. Saratoga and Sugu were walking side by side in the corridor. It was not yet late at night, so she had changed into her nightgown early. She had several nightgowns, and the one she was wearing now was a goose yellow nightgown. The nightgown was a little see-through, but she had put on her underwear properly. Saratoga didn't hesitate to wrap one hand around Sugu's arm, squeezing her chest, and said, "What are you and the raiders doing?" Darling and sweetheart both screamed. This was a serious slander. Sugu said, "Don't talk nonsense. I didn't scream like that. I was just helping her tidy up the room. Normally, counterattack doesn't do these things. When Richelieu comes back, counterattack helps them tidy up the room in the afternoon. Anyway, counterattack is always busy, talking about maid. It's strange that she didn't help tidy up the room." Sugu said, "Don't you remember that plate of pizza? Except it's a little salty and a little bitter, it still tastes good." Saratoga had tasted a little bit, and still had lingering fears, but was still unconvinced and said, "What does that matter? I have been working hard on the counterattack all afternoon. I gave you a blow during the meal. In the evening, I went to summarize my failure experience. If you look out of the window, the lights in the cafeteria are still on. I guess the counterattack is there. You can go there now. Just in time to have supper with Akage." Sugu felt his sister-in-law's suspicious eyes, and saw that her sister-in-law really wanted to look through the window, so he continued, "And am I that kind of person? Give me a little trust, please. If you go out with Helena, Helena will have a ring when you come back. If you go out with Akage, you will have a ring when you come back. I also think about it, brother-in-law, tell me, how should I trust my brother-in-law?" To be honest, Akage gave him the ring before he went out. However, Sugu wanted to defend himself, but this was really not something easy to defend. Sugu said, "We were just talking about rabbits." "Rabbit? Rabbits are not delicious and no one raises them here." "Rabbit, I didn't mean the rabbit you ate. Didn't you even remember your companions? The rabbit is the light aircraft carrier USS Princeton, my gaga." Saratoga hugged Sugu's arm and said, "I like my brother-in-law to say, my gaga, these words. Hey, you two have gone too far. Compared to the raiders, Saratoga, your level of cuteness and flirting is not bad." Saratoga chuckled twice and then said, "Princeton, I know her well, what's wrong with her? I heard from the raider that she has now become a beautiful dealer." Saratoga tilted her head cutely and said, "Beautiful dealer? I remember the rabbit has freckles on its face." "No way. It's just, well, rabbit, where is it now?" "I don't know. I need to ask Bumblebee." There were 3 people in the room in York City. Northampton, with long brown hair, was standing by the bookcase. She was flipping through the brand new books in the bookcase. There are all kinds of classics, comics, and fairy tales. This is really an elegant bookcase. You can also find a few comics without covers on the corners of the bookcase. When you open them, they are full of unsightly pictures. If Bazai were here, she would proudly say that this is her masterpiece. There are 2 large beds in the room, one of which was moved from another spare room by York City on its own initiative. There was a person sitting next to the bed at this time, that was Bumblebee. Bumblebee hadn't bathed yet, hadn't changed into pajamas, and was still dressed in broad daylight. Compared with the day, The only difference was that her blonde ponytail was untied, and her long blonde hair was spread out on the white sheets. Sleeping on the bed was York City, holding Bumblebee's silky blonde hair. York City herself has short hair. She said, with such long hair, wouldn't it be troublesome to wash it? Even if you are a ship girl, your clothes will be dirty, and of course your hair will be dirty. Bumblebee said, of course it's troublesome, but I like long hair, it's easiest to cut my head bald. Are you willing to cut it? Short hair is already very convenient, and you don't need to go bald, but your long hair is still great. I thought about growing it long before, but I just kept it short because it was too troublesome, and I don't know if the ship girl can grow her hair long. Anyway, they all said that if they want it, their hair will slowly grow longer. I think that statement is very strange, and I don't know how to calculate it as wanting it or not wanting it. Bumblebee said, I don't think that statement is reliable. We used to have a battleship in the garrison. She desperately wanted to grow taller and breasts, but for a long time, she didn't grow at all. York City studied in the academy system. Although he was not knowledgeable or skilled, he still heard some things. No matter how much a person lies, he cannot deceive himself. If you are not a perseverant person, there is no way to become an admiral. A ship girl also has no way to deceive her heart. York City said, the battleship you are talking about, she keeps saying that she wants to grow taller and have breasts. In fact, for her, she has given up on herself in her heart. Just like those women who want to lose weight run every day, but eat high-calorie foods. They know in their hearts that there is no way to lose weight. Just like the ship girl you mentioned, who keeps drinking milk and eating papaya, in fact, in her heart I firmly believe that I can't grow taller and have breasts. Bumblebee nodded thoughtfully, feeling sympathy in his heart, and then said, that's right, but my sister's breasts are great. No matter how big your breasts are, they can't be as big as your butt. No wonder the Admiral calls you Didgeridoo. Bumblebee felt the cold palm on her butt. She quickly pressed York City's palm and said, sister, stop, or I will do it. Then do it. Bumblebee turned his head to attack his sister York City's chest, and then the two rolled together. York City, Bumblebee, Bumblebee, let me ask you something. Northampton held a book and looked at the door, shouting, Admiral. She raised her voice deliberately just to wake up some people. The hair was messy, the clothes and skirts were lifted, the two people were pressed together and panting. This was the York City and Bumblebee that Sugu saw. Saratoga whispered, brother-in-law, don't look at it, you will get needle eyes. Sugu pursed his lips and looked at the needle. York City was arranging her clothes. Even though she wanted to sacrifice her life to feed the tiger a few days ago, even though she had a carefree personality, she blushed a little when she saw such a scene. She looked at Bumblebee, who was pulling up her skirt, and complained, if the Admiral comes in, he will knock on the door. You didn't close the door at all. Sugu felt strange that no pillow was thrown at him. Then I have to remind you, you can't just break into a girl's room. I can't loudly say, I'm coming, please pay attention. In fact, Sugu has seen a lot of this kind of welfare scene since he established the garrison. The Toot-Larry mansion is the home of a ship girl, and the ship girl seems a bit casual at home. Moreover, for ship girls, the Admiral comes first, and then the man and woman. Although they can be defensive, they should not be too defensive. Sugu argued that York City was still unreasonable, and she said, in any case, it's the Admiral's fault. It's the girls who suffer, so of course they can be unreasonable. Sugu came here to have something to do, not to quarrel. He said, okay, it's my fault. It's my fault. I shouldn't have looked at you. Stop talking, and I'll hit you again. York City took a minute to calm down and asked, what's the matter with the Admiral? I'm looking for Bumblebee. I heard from the raiders that you met Rabbit before. She worked as a dealer on a luxury cruise ship, as well as in Guam and Alaska. At this time, Bumblebee was a little shyer than York City, and she spent less time living with Sugu, unlike York City, who had been by Sugu's side since he woke up. I don't know if she was seen just now. Thinking in her mind, Bumblebee looked a little coy, and she said, "Yes, we met Rabbit before, and I borrowed the carrier-based aircraft from her, and later returned it." "Give it to her." "So what's the name of that cruise ship? Can we go find her?" Although he has been an admiral for such a long time, he has not had the opportunity to experience a luxury cruise ship. Sugu is not a person who has no desires and desires. He still wants to enjoy luxury things. "I forgot." "Well, the Hornet is as unreliable as the Raider. The Storm Goddess used to be a battleship and was later converted into a luxury cruise ship." This was Northampton's voice. She closed the book and said again, "Admiral wants to find them." Sugu nodded. "That battleship is different from ordinary battleships. Many countries stopped building battleships after the emergence of deep-sea warships. Until now, many battleships are old battleships and can only float on the sea and cannot be launched. But that battleship, the battleship, can still move. That battleship was built very late, and it seems that it was because the shipyard had a lot to do with it. It was only built, and it was transformed into a luxury cruise ship without participating in a single battle. This battleship is almost a battleship. The last afterglow of the era. Because of its historical value, it was later transformed into a luxury cruise ship and is very popular. That ship sails back and forth between Fujian City and North America, and may also stay on the high seas for many days. Anyway, I don't know where it is now. I don't know if it is on the high seas or in North America. Anyway, it is not in Fujian City. We just started from come back from Fujian City. If we want to find rabbits, we can only wait until the luxury cruise ship docks in Fujian City." There was nothing the luxury cruise could do. Sugu said, "Washington is working as a lawyer now. Should we go to her first? It was a long time ago when we met Washington. I wonder how she is now. And it has been so long in North America. If we can't find her, there will be a problem. Rabbit should be related to her. We might as well wait until that luxury cruise ship docked in Fujian City, then find the rabbit first, and then find Washington." It's hard to tell that Northampton is quite smart. Sugu asked again, "How long does it take for that ship to go back and forth?" "I don't remember, I don't know exactly. It should be like this for at least a month. If possible, the plane should be made faster. Planes are not safe. If they encounter a deep-sea ship, girl, something will happen. And it's so far away that they can't fly." Of course Sugu knew this. There were only propeller planes here, so he just said it casually. "No luxury cruise, lost."